and welcome. My name is Jocelyn, and if you did not already know, every month I do a Shop My Stash on my channel where I go through my makeup collection and then pull out things to use for that next month. Last month, I decided to switch it up a little bit, and I still do the Shop My Stash, but to kind of make the eyeshadow palette portion of Shop My Stash a little more fun and a little more random, I guess you could say, I put all of my eyeshadow palettes into a spreadsheet, and with the help of Google's random number generator, I randomly generated the palettes that I have to use for that month. And I did my first one last month. I'm gonna do that again for the month of January, but I thought I would kind of recap the couple of palettes, well, the 5 palettes that were chosen for me last month, just to kind of give you a quick little review of how it went, which ones I used the most, which ones I used the least, and I'll also throw in the 2 palettes that I did choose during my Shop My Stash, just to give those a little bit of the limelight also. I have a total of 7 palettes that I'll run through real fast, and then with the help of Google, we will randomly generate the next 5 that we're going to use for the month of January. So these were all of the palettes that were chosen for me last month, and let's start in order of least used to most used. So I only used this first one once, and I did get it on video and I had a lot of compliments, so maybe I should have used it more than once, but I did only use the Kaleidos palette, the Sci-Fi Green palette, once, and this is what the inside looks like. I know some people said that this felt like a very Christmassy palette to them. It just didn't for me, so hopefully this will get chosen for us again in the later months, but this month, or this last month, I only did use it once. Moving on, I had kind of the same issue with this next palette. So the next one that was chosen was the Natasha Denona Sunrise palette, and this is one of my favorite color stories of all time in my collection. However, it feels so spring and summer to me, maybe a little bit fall, but very not Christmassy to me. I did use it a couple times. I primarily reached in, I used the shade Morgan, which is this peach color, and then I used a couple of the shimmer shades, like I used the shade Laurel up here, and also, no, not that one, Awakening, which is a kind of peachy pink shimmer. So I did use a couple of these, but I definitely did not reach for this very often. Again, only a couple times. Sometimes I combined some of the palettes. I don't think that I did any looks with just this palette. I always just reached in for 1 or 2 shades. Next is this one right here. This is the Natasha Denona Gold palette. I did reach into this one quite a bit, specifically for, oh, I forgot that the shades are weird on this. Aria, which is this matte shade up here. I used that a few times. I also used this shimmer in this upper right corner. I also made a look with this shimmer shade. I wanted to use these blue and duochromes in this corner, but I never quite got around to doing that. I am filming this on the 30th, so I could maybe hold this for tomorrow and use these for New Year's Eve. I think Alex and I are just gonna spend the day together and the night together and drink mimosas. I'm very excited. This actually might make a really good New Year's Eve look, so maybe I'll save this and just kind of put it off to the side to use for tomorrow. But I did use this a couple of times, well, a couple more times than the Sunrise palette, but not as often as I reached for the next 2. So the next one is the Modern Renaissance palette. I used this more at the beginning of December. There's not really much to say about it. I used a handful of the shades, not really anything on this half of the palette. I primarily stuck to this half of the palette. There was quite a few days when I didn't wear any eyeshadow, just because I wasn't feeling it this last month. Not really sure why. Probably because, you know, this last month with the holidays was just kind of so weird. But this last palette that was chosen for us via the help of Google, I used the most, and I did really just use the same shades over and over again because I really liked the look that I kept coming up with. And it is the old Makeup Geek and Manny MUA palette. This is what the inside looks like if you did not know. So I did use most, well, I didn't use these bottom 3 shades right here, but I did use all of the rest of them. I primarily really loved these 3 on this side over here. So what is that? I think it's Luna, Frappe, and Aphrodite, I think. Yeah, so Luna, Frappe, and Aphrodite, and then also Sora. Oh, and then also the shimmer shade up here. This is the shade Artemis. I really like this palette, and I liked, it's like a warm but also kind of cool toned kind of look that I kept doing with this palette. So I did recreate that look many times during the month of December. So this one was my most used, interestingly enough. And then the two palettes that I chose for myself this month are these two right here. So the first is the At Foresight Raw Beauty Christie and ColourPop palette. I used this a handful of times. This is probably up there with my last two most used from the ones that were selected for us. I reached into Old Growth, which is this really pretty shade up here, quite a few times. I also reached into Homegrown and Let It Rain, and also Amanita, these dark shades down here, because I did a lot of liner days where I just had like a little bit of concealer and foundation and then just like kind of a little smoked liner. So I reached into this palette a lot for that smoked liner effect. And yeah, so I used this a fair amount also. And then finally, this one right here, this is the Shared Planet Polar Bear Collection palette. I chose this because of the cool tones, and I thought December would be a really good option for this. I only used this, I think, twice. Once a few weeks ago, and then today. I'm so bummed at myself because I really wanted to use it more, and I used it today, and I really love the eyeshadow look that I came up with. So if this gets chosen for us at another point during the year, I'm gonna be very perfectly happy with that because it's so pretty. I love it. So I only used this twice, so this definitely ranks at the bottom of my list. But there you have it. So you'll have to let me know if you liked me going over the palettes that I used for the previous month, and if you'd like me to continue to include that section in future monthly Shop My Stash palette specific random generated videos like this. All right, so there's my review of all of the palettes from last month. Let's go ahead and jump into the palettes that I'm going to be using for January. I have my random number generator pulled up. A minimum of 1, a maximum of 46. I did get sort of 3 palettes well, not really. I got 1 new palette last month, so I added that in. It was the ColourPop Blush Crush palette. I'm looking over here because I've got my computer in here now. And then I also added 2 lines at the bottom of my list for the Divina shadows that I purchased during December/November, and also the JD Glow shadows that I purchased that I got during December. So, all right, so make sure this is in focus. 44, what is that? 44 is actually behind me, so let me go grab it. All right, so 44 is the Storybook Cosmetics Charlie and the Chocolate Factory palette. Definitely not something I would have chosen for this time of year, so hopefully I won't make the same mistake as I did with some of the other palettes from last month where I didn't reach for it because it just wasn't quite the right time of year in my heart to use something like this, but we'll see what I can do. This is definitely a very interesting palette, so we'll see how it ranks next month. All right, so 44, 6. What is 6? ColourPop. Oh! Well, this is exciting. This is one of my favorite palettes from ColourPop, the Going Coconuts palette. So this is very appropriate. I think that this will rank pretty high for palettes that I use for this next month. So, ooh, I'm very excited. This is one of my all-time favorites. All right, so we had 42. Oh wow, this month is exciting. Okay, so next we get to use one of my magnetic palettes that's full of very beautiful shades. Oh, I'm so excited. Okay. Here we have it. So this is my ColourPop magnetic palette. This is full of ColourPop shadows along with Sydney Grace shadows. So I think most of the Sydney Grace stuff is on this side of the palette, and then I've got some ColourPop ones on that side of the palette. Ooh, wow, I'm gonna have so much. I might not end up pulling in any palettes during my Shop My Stash because I'm gonna have a lot to work with. Let's choose palette number 4. 19, we're getting quite a range here. Oh, interesting. Okay, so last month the Kaleidos Sci-Fi Green palette was chosen for us, and now we have this one right here, the Kaleidos Futurism, is it 5? I don't know, I can't read Roman numerals to save my life. The VR Neon palette. Definitely not a color story that I would particularly gravitate towards for the month of January, but like I said with the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory palette, we're gonna we're gonna do our best. Maybe January needs some brightness and excitement. Holy moly, we are getting a colorful, it's like Google knows that I need some excitement in my life for the month of January and February, which are just, you know, it's right after the holidays, it's freaking cold outside, so. All right, and 25. 25 is, ooh, okay, all right. Ooh, where is it, over here? Our last palette is another one of my favorites, if I can pull it out. This will actually, I think, work to combine with some of the palettes that were chosen for us. It is the Dose of Colors Blushing Berries palette. I love this palette. This is actually one of my all-time favorite travel palettes. Not that I'm doing a whole heck of a lot of that right now, but I love taking this traveling with just a single pan shimmer shadow. Oof, beautiful, easy to use. Wow. Well done, Google. Oh my goodness, some of my favorites. All right, so let's run through them real fast. So we have the Kaleidos VR Neon palette, the Dose of Colors Blushing Berries, my ColourPop Magnetic palette full of ColourPop and Sydney Grace single shadows, the ColourPop Going Coconuts palette, and then finally the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory palette by Storybook Cosmetics. What an interesting array of eyeshadow products that have been chosen for us. Maybe I'll choose one palette, but maybe not. I don't know. I feel like I might be interested to really just hone in on these palettes. I think we have quite a good array of palettes. We've got colorful, we've got warm toned, we've got cool toned, we've got, oh my gosh, so much in this palette. And then I don't even know really what goes on in this palette. It's just so much. I might have to look up some reviews and tutorials using this palette to just kind of see what people come up with in their minds. Ooh, let's maybe like choose a shade. I think I'd really like to try using Golden Ticket. It's this really beautiful gold color. And then maybe also Mike TV. That's a really pretty, what kind of green? It's like an evergreen. No, not ever. It's like a mint peppermint, I don't even know. Well, there you have it. Those are the eyeshadow palettes that I will be using for December. If you don't want to miss my Shut My Stash to see if I pull in any other ones, then definitely keep an eye out for that and subscribe if you don't want to miss it. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. All of those buttons are down below, and I think that is everything I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.